Good evening and welcome to another edition of African Americans Ain't Africans, the Think Show that proves without a shadow of a doubt that the so-called African American didn't find his way to America in the trunk of a ship. I'm your host, the Indigenous One. And I just got back from the Alabama Kitawa Nation down near Tuskegee, Alabama, a little town called Franklin. And let me just say, I just want to say to all the people who were there, I was like, wow. And as one of the brothers there told me something, he said, dude, we have everything we need. I'm talking land as far as the eye can see. You can go down there and you can see what 40 acres is. You know, instead of just having it, you think, but you really don't know. You know, down there, you can see what 40 acres is. And it's been stolen from most of you. Well, I'm sorry, given away, what we have given away to a lot, because a lot of times what the African American like to do is whine that somebody did something to us and you owe us. No, dude, you give it to them because you give it to them because you want to chase what they're presenting you. You don't want to produce anything for yourself. The African American, their whole purpose is to build another man's empire on top of their ancestors, right or wrong. See, we don't do no wiggling and all that bullshit talk here. You got land. There's no land problem. The only problem that you have with the land is that the people who the land is and who's connected to the land just walked away from it. Just walked them. They fucked, I'm going to live in LA. I often tell the story about a cat in LA. I met a cat in LA. He's about 10 years younger than my mother. And he tells the story of how his grandfather, they was living large on 1,000 acres in Mississippi, and they raised cattle. You know they was paid. You know they was paid. You know what made him not want to do that no more, to walk away from that? He saw the movie Car Wash and wanted to go work in a car wash. So when I say that African Americans are twisted, I ain't lying. It hurts because we don't want to, because we know most of us have done that. Just tricked off the land. You don't want it no more. And you could build whatever you want. That was what's so cool about this weekend, because you were meeting people that did that. You got to go to these places because you got people down there that is, and they doing it by themselves. Nobody's down there to help. Most of us rather be in the big cities, making sure the Asian restaurants are okay, making sure they sell weed, making sure those businesses are intact. That's what the African American does. That's what the African American is. That's what he was trained to do. He does nothing other than that. Stop pretending like you're not, because you're confusing everything. I mean, you're not confusing me, but you're making it where these young people can't see clearly, and they think because you do dumb shit that they can follow and do what you do. It don't work like that. And that's how we get drove in the ground. And then have the audacity to ignore the mistake and keep doing it. What's that? What's that? You can't complain and tell somebody to do something for you when you are in total disarray because you want to do what you want to do. Fuck everybody else. And that's what an African American is, an individual. They're not connected to the land at all. At all. I mean, the women that live on the land compared to the women who live in the city are two different species of women altogether. Women who live on the land, women who eat the plants, women who, grow their own food, women who live in the middle of nowhere. Total different, or like you would say, what God intended to be. To the people that live in the city, the people who live in the city eat, they don't eat. They're fed, right? Right? And then to walk around like what you're getting what somebody's telling you you're getting. And you haven't seen that doesn't work. Me? Huh? So it's not that there's a land problem. So this is where it started. And I'm telling you this so you can start to know how to back up out of that. Before I get started, I want to say Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year. See, when you celebrate New Year, when the spring starts, because spring forward, spring is something new. You're springing into something new. You're springing into something fresh. You've been hibernating all winter because it's been cold. You can't do shit. Everything is dead. It's frost. Boom. Time for it to turn around again. Spring is when everything springs new. That's when New Year's start. Most Negroes celebrate New Year's in the dead of winter. And that's just a little. That's just a smidgen of what they have the indigenous people of America doing. So they gone. And they look at you crazy. No semblance to the people, to the indigenous people of America. Oh, no difference. You went from them, savage, Indian, savage, black, colored, naming you as if you're a thing, like you don't have nothing to do with it. You let somebody come put a name around your neck and you will wear it proudly. That's what the African American does. What you call the African American, the black man, they nut theirself when they can put on a suit, when they can feel, why? Because they don't have they have no fashion of themselves. They always go with what somebody else has. The females the same way. They don't make they wear stuff from China, whatever sold to them. They don't create their own anything. The indigenous people did. And just look at the clothes sisters made back in the 1800s. You'll piss your pants. Bad. Don't do that no more. We brag about how we can go make other nations, build other nations' wealth. We brag that we do that. Right? I would say 90%, and I'm on the low end. I think I'm on the low end. If you would see the land, because that was my first time in that part of Alabama. Beautiful. No people on the land. We don't think about as a group of people how to build. We're going to build our own houses in accordance with, the earth, the terrain of the earth. We're going to do something with these mounds. This is your ancestor stuff. You say, screw that. You go help build Bangladesh's. That's what the African American does Tell me when I'm lying. So I just want to say to the Kitawa, Alabama Kitawa, thank you for a wonderful weekend. Um, you brothers have vision, you sisters have vision. I realize that you don't have the people, because that's all that's needed. Need hands. Need hands. I mean, you would go do it for somebody else. You won't do it for yourself. With the African American, no. And you're gonna have to get used to that. That you're just gonna have to count them out, because they're, they not with it. They've been trained to be what they are, and they're not moving from it. So the people that's left, they're bringing all these people over here now. And you would think the African American know, because they being gentrified in the cities. I mean, damn. I mean, is that not is that not a warning to you? Is that not a hint? They being gentrified. They taking these cities. Okay, so remember, they were going to it's a new age. It's a new age. So this is how twisted we are. There's a new age. They're going into a technical, electronical technical age. Where are we in that? How aren't we in our cities, building our cities up to compete with the rest of the world? Because there's a disconnect between the African American and the indigenous people. And we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks or so the history of that, how that happened. Because remember, the people on the land, when you're on the land, it's something in you that sees things different. They pulled the people off the land into the cities and put them in yards. So you have to, it's just, you're training people. These people are living, the land, you would see the land that people were living on, and that there had to be, you have to have 100 people just working it. And I'm seeing stuff with just a husband and wife team kicking it out the yard on mounds, on old chunky fields, on old football. Because the land doesn't change. It's probably set if you're on the coast somewhere, but the land really doesn't change. You could see fields that they played games on back then. Trees, fruit trees everywhere. Everywhere. We don't even go to the woods. So if you're ever down there, this is a shameless plug for the Wild Wild West. If you ever want to go to a cool spot on some land, it'll just blow you away, and walk around it. It'll blow your mind. Walk around their yard and then compare it to your yard. If you're in the city, you live in the city, you live in a cubby hole. I don't care where you live. That's how they pull you off the land so they can come in and claim it. And that's what the African American is all about. He's with that. Matter of fact, he signs his name to that. He sanctions that, and will be arrogant about it. So if everybody's going into a new age, what are we doing? And this is just in a little dot in Alabama. This is all I'm talking about. This is all over the Southeast. You ran away from the city. Don't when people run away from home, Africans, Mexicans, everybody, they send money back, or they help build the infrastructure back where they come from. How come the African American doesn't do that? Seriously, let's ask that question. Let's stop asking these old bullshit questions that don't mean nothing, just talking. Why doesn't the African American, why isn't the South build up? from the African Americans sending money and resources through all these years? You have to answer that question so you'll know what not to do later. See, we don't even want to talk about it. And that was cool about this weekend. Them brothers and sisters was talking about that stuff, and us, and they're doing something about it. So there are people doing things. They do, and I'm telling you, they got brothers. They got a band of 10 brothers doing the work of 500. Because why? Because we don't have the manpower. We'd rather build somebody else's empire over our ancestors. That's the African. If the African American does nothing else, that's the first thing he gonna do, and brag about it. So what? I can do what I want to do, right? Right? Stop pretending like it's not like that, because the more you pretend that it's not like that, and it is, it'll be a lot harder for the generation behind you to pick it up. You got to tell them what's up, because the kids are off the hook. They want to know what to do. They want to know what to do. The rivers down there, what you can build along the rivers, the different kind of housings you can build, the artifacts and the stuff in these places. Just think of it as, so when you go down to Mexico, when you go to the pyramids in Mexico, it's like that. The land is still there. It may not be a structure like Moundville or nothing like that, or Cahokia or nothing like that, but you still have the yards. You still have where people did their everyday things. Town squares. And, those are your people who put that together. And we just walk away from it, and go build other people's empires. I don't, who does that? The African American. And you keep pretending like it's not, or you keep getting mad because you get being called out on it. The children that you're around and that will grow up around you, they'll be devoid of any knowledge and just erase them from the land altogether. Because you have to admit, living in the cities, walking on top of all that concrete, you have to admit that's cutting you off from the land. But we don't want to talk about it. We get mad. Cut off from the land. You're not connected to the land no more. Right? Right? You're not connected to the land no more. Then other people from other nations come over, and where they come from looks like a lot of times your land. Because they come from places that aren't close to the cities. They're coming from rural areas too. This 500 acres here look like, and they get it. Why? Because we at the Grammys, the football game is on. They about to have the NFL. We into other stuff. We're into making other people wealth. We're not looking at ourselves like that. You were looking at ourselves as African Americans. You're not looking at yourself as the indigenous people of America. You're not looking at yourself with their first dictionary published. When it said American, it was talking about you. They called them soul people. They're talking about you. But you masses said, I can be a, and now you can be whatever you want to be. You can be whatever, you can do what you want to with yourself. for what you're thinking now, because you thinking right now, you don't think in 10 or 20 years or 30 or 40 or 50 or 7 generations. The African American doesn't think like that. The African American thinks for now. Think of the African American as, you ever see like when a dog is sniffing on the ground and he finds something, he's there for a minute, then he moves on. That's how the African American is trained. They do stuff for the now. I'm like, well, dude, don't tattoo your face up, because when you want to have kids and stuff like that, is what does that do to you? What does that do? And you see, and you see the fallout of that. This is what we doing, and we pretend. Like I say, that pretend shit is a problem. There's land everywhere. There's land everywhere. And one of the what would you call it? Okay, so let's just say, when they tell you the story about Africa, they snatched all the people out of Africa. Wouldn't that be a big problem? A big problem? I mean, generations would they be talking about it? It would be put on the money, because their people were stolen and went somewhere else. That would be, people would wear that on their sleeve like never again. So the Africans come over here and they told Negroes over here this story, and see, and one thing that you'll notice about the African American, he doesn't think for himself. He waits for other people to bring him information. He will stand on that information and get obliterated when he brings it here, because they never think for themselves. Somebody always tells them what to say and what to do, and they don't even think about it. That's what an African American is. Stop acting like it's something that it's not. You're being played with all this black stuff now because you done let the chick Kamala Harris in. That's gonna muddy waters. You gonna go along with it. The African American is gonna go along with it. And these people are gonna come over here and go right to your land and take it. And you're gonna make sure they're comfortable doing it. If they sell you a nose ring, you'll buy it. This is what you've been reduced to. But you pretend and act like you're not. Time will tell. Time will tell. You have land everywhere, and and the cold part about it is you got people running it for they just need hands. How come we're not building our own communities? It's like the brother a new Thunder talks about the cold. How come we not build our own creation communities? How come we're not doing solar? How come we don't have a solar institute? We got all these black intellectual colleges, but we not, solar panels. Why are we not doing that like that? Why don't the politicians bring this up? Why don't the people who you guys worship, and why aren't they doing this? The people who are not, if you're going to maintain yourselves on this planet, you better teach your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren what to do. Because nothing changes around here but ideology. The land stays the same, especially when the people have been disconnected for it so long. You can see the rolling hills and the trees. It has to be over 1 billion trees. I don't even want to. I don't even want to count. I don't even want to count because I don't even know. It's everywhere. And these are the places that we can build for ourselves. So it's definitely what I'm doing. I see it. So you can't disconnect yourself from the land and think you're a part of it. And if you're not a part of it, if you're not, wanting to be a part of it, it's easy to get you off of it. Everybody's read the Georgia Guidestones. Those of you who haven't, I suggest that you do. Because see, we like to, oh, I didn't know that was there. How didn't you know that was there? And what it says. See, this is how we get caught up. We like to pretend like we don't know shit. I didn't hear about that. Well, what were you listening to? Then nobody wants to talk. You being set up with all this stuff that they telling you, with all these celebrities. Really? Really? You have these immigrants. Uh, so my sister was telling me that she read an article where they said they had 25 people in the car trying to get over. It looked like they were coming from South America over to here. I don't know if they were sent there. I don't know anything about it. But my sister said, I just can't see that they could find, I think, like 25 people in a car. And so he told me that. So a couple of days later, somebody sends me a video. I think this was in Panama somewhere, where they pulled, all of these people out of the car. And people are scramming over here because they think your land is better than their land. But guess what you think of your own land? You rather live in an apartment. Check out how they got you off the land. Got you off the land, got you in things called yards because you wanted to work for boss. You remember this is America. This is you. You're called the Americans. Everybody knows it. Let's get them off the land. Let's hoard them and have them do our workforce, build our empires for us. That's what you did. You moved into yards, had your families. Those families spread out to go build their masters' empires. Right or wrong? That's how you were taking off your land. You were taking off the land. So imagine going off of 500 acres of land or whatever the people had or whatever industry they were doing back there in the early 1800s. They were living on land as far as the eye can see. Imagine moving on. And one of the things about the being on all that land, when you walk it, it does something to you. When you walk it, it does something to you. It be compared to living in the city, walking to, well, let's say you walk to work, you're on concrete, you're in a building all day, you're not in nature, you have fluorescence lights flooding you, you get no sun, and you think you're normal? You think you're normal? So got the people off the land, moved them in the yards. What did you think that did to them? Psychologically, or their connection to the earth when they moved them into these cities and in these yards. And I say this is the early 1900s. These people are living on land. Now they're coming to work in these cities for these jobs. And I know my grandfather was pulling in 27 cents an hour when he was working in the coal mines. While you're doing that, they're taking your land. So since you moved off that 500 acres and then you moved into these cities, in these yards, but you were still procreating. See, that's another thing that we don't like to talk about is back in the day, the women had a lot of babies. Why did they have a lot of babies? They needed the hands. They needed the hands. The woman she didn't look at it as 15 babies. She looked at it as 30 hands because they were building. And then that building was interrupted because we wanted to go build somebody else's empire on your land. And you've been going away from that ever since. Right or wrong? So if it's wrong, you can just easily dismiss it. You can go watch the NCAA basketball game and forget what I say. But if it's right, you got to correct it. Because they walked you to the edge now. Go check out the Georgia Guidestones. It says what it says. Read what it says. It says you got to reduce the population. I think it's 90%. And you can't tell me that that's what this COVID thing is doing, huh? And the cities, the last major city I was in was Los Angeles a couple of months ago. No, it's not fit for human consumption. So this is what's happening in all these places. And this is what you have all this land. It's the perfect matchup. You being gentrified in the city, go back home. Damn. And with African American, he's been so disconnected from home, he can't go back. I know many of you you don't know. I know it's y'all gonna say that, but you go ahead and get them. They can't. Because if they could, they trust me, they would. And you have people that are doing it. You mean to tell me these cities down here, in all these states, couldn't use the people who are from there? Why isn't that something that should be thought about for indigenous people's survival? An industry. You control the food. You have your own markets where you sell to each other because getting your food from people and you don't know them and what they eat and what they chop up and all that. You don't know. Hasn't our health been horrible since we've done that? Seriously, some of the most agile people ever. And our health has just gone to why? Because we eat from the hands of others and then don't want to talk about it. That's what's going to be the problem. You have to let your kids know what they're being fed. Everything's just not a shiny cellophane wrap. The sound of a potato chip bag opening, you're not controlled by that. Do that when you're around people, have a potato chip bag and watch people check you out, jump right all over you. What you got? This is how the African American has been trained. So I don't want to be long tonight. I just want to end it. But listen, the land, this was in a little part, Franklin, Alabama. I mean, it's nowhere on the map. But you got some folks out there doing some fabulous things. And when you're in that part of town, when you staying in a hotel or something, check out some of the bed and breakfasts that your people have down there. They have them down there. The Wild Wild West in Franklin. Beautiful place. This brothers and sisters has. It's better than staying in a motel or a hotel. So look, thank you guys for joining me tonight. Check out some of the places. If you're living in the cities, Go check out some of the places where your people are from. It'll blow you away. And I think the vision, you could see a lot further if a lot of people did that. Just go stand on the land, that your ancestors built, because a lot of the stuff was destroyed because a lot of the people were ran out because of wars. That's another chapter. We'll get into that a little later. But if you can go back, if you can just find out where your great 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 grandmother lived, what part of the earth she lived on, it probably, the name is probably erased to history, but look it up, find out where she's from. Where did she live by? Did she live by a river? Did she live by a river that shipped textile? What did she do? These people weren't nobody just on the land just waiting to be pat on the head. These people were doing things. These people were moving tobacco. They were moving cotton. These are your industries. You ever ask yourself that? How does the cotton industry, how did we let that slip out of our hands? How do we let the tobacco? You know, how come Negroes don't make their own cigarettes? And you never get an answer. How did that happen? And why aren't you trying to do anything to restore it? And then you get nothing. So that's the African American. So I want to say thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight. Check out the land that your people own, man. It'll blow you away. It'll blow you away. All right. You guys have a good night. Peace.